Hello everyone and welcome to episode 4 of the Lookout Sir experience, recorded as we love to call it here, although to be honest with you, in the third episode we decided we might not start calling it that anymore because it's a bit of a weird mouthful, but nonetheless it's the 40k podcast, the Warhammer 40,000 that is podcast from us, the good people of Lookout Sir. And when I talk about us, I of course mean myself, Dan, and my good pal Phil. How's it going, Phil?
Hello.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it, man. Glad to hear it indeed. Have you had an active and or productive week thus far?
Yep, it's been good. Did a bit of kill team yesterday with our good friend Joe, who is sadly absent from today's recording. He's obviously too busy being shamed from his defeats in our game of kill team.
Did you defeat him?
Yes, with my plucky chaos cultists. What they call the Apostles of Thalos.
My goodness.
It wasn't an utter thrashing, but in terms of victory points, it ended up being it because it will take too long to go into it. But it ended up being like it was, I don't know, like 8-3 or something in the end.
So it wasn't an utter thrashing, but it was an utter thrashing.
Yes, it didn't feel like it, but when you totted up the points at the end, it ended up being quite a big difference.
Isn't Joe 2-0 against you now then in kill team games?
In our 2 solo games, I've beat him both times, which is weird because each time I play him, I absolutely hate. Not I hate playing him, obviously, but the Scions are so ridiculously tough, and the heavy guns that they have, which are the sort of heavy hot shots, I can't quite remember what they're called, are ridiculously overpowered. And despite me complaining about all of that, I still managed to beat him, so I sort of feel a bit better about it.
Because you're a much better gamer than he is.
I wish that was the case. I really doubt it.
No, I'm sure that is the case, mate. Otherwise, how would you secure those 2 wins? You're a much better gamer than he is. Fact, he has a more powerful netless kill team, and you're taking him to school with cultists. I mean, that...
Well, it's true. And he constantly rolls 6s as well with his jammy Games Workshop official Astra Militarum kill team dice as well.
With his weighted kill team dice.
Well, they will always roll 6s, normally preceded by a 1 as well. So I think that's how it balances out.
That's how they balance it out. It's weighted as equally to 1s as it is to 6s, unfortunately. So you're either going to miss and wound, not that that would then precede a wound or a wound roll, but anyway, blah, blah, blah. Rules and junk. Well, that's good, Phil. Good times. I myself haven't really done anything hobby-related for a while. We tried to do an episode 4 a couple of weeks ago, but that all kind of fell over because we said a bunch of stuff was coming out and new and interesting, and we talked about that, and then before we knew it, it was all out of date and new stuff was on the horizon. I mean, as we're talking right now, Nova is going on in the background on my screen. I've got the Nova Open Game 2 playing in the background. And obviously there was a bunch of announcements from there and stuff, which we're not going to talk about today because, to be honest with you, all we can really do about new releases go, wow, that looks cool. Which, wow, that looks cool. And it does. So we didn't really feel like we could elaborate any more than that on that topic. But when it comes to today's show, what we're going to be talking about is there's been a lot of controversy, obviously, with the ForgeWorld new pricing stuff. And we want to talk about that because we want to add our opinion to that big pool of opinions, potentially offer a different perspective on things. I don't know how me and Phil feel collectively, but we'll find out soon enough. And then beyond that, we're also going to be talking about the Space Wolves Codex because I have that in my possession, and I'm quite happy and excited to have an opportunity to talk through that. Hopefully do a better job than what Joe did when talking about kill teams. Again, apologies for the last episode featuring a number of mistakes. We have since discovered many things that we didn't get exactly right. But if you remember from episode 3, we kind of said it was a collaborative journey of discovery. It just turns out we hadn't discovered everything at that point. So please forgive our transgressions when it concerns our inability to note certain rules, or more specifically Joe's ability. He's not here, so we can...
It's totally his fault. We can let him take the blame. We can fall on his sword.
Exactly it, mate. He's done all... It's all his fault. That's why he's not here today, really. I mean, we say he's busy doing something about moving house or something, but the truth is that we've given him a timeout We've put him in the corner. We've told him to go away and think about what he's done, and he'll be back hopefully next time.
Once he's memorised that rule set off by heart.
Exactly. And we'll do another Kill Team recap where we get it all right, hopefully. But that's it, really. Yeah. So again, we're going to talk about a bit of ForgeWorld stuff, talk about the Space Wolves stuff. I mean, again, obviously, Space Wolves has been out in the wider populous for almost a week now. So hopefully, you'll enjoy our take on the book and our perspective on it. And yeah, was there anything else we needed to discuss, Phil? Those were the two things we were talking about, right?
Yeah, that's all. I think it might be good at some point, maybe in a couple of episodes' time, or maybe the next one, to talk about Kill Team in terms of what we think about it, since we've now played it quite a bit. So that would be a good topic for future. But for now, I think we've got everything covered.
Awesome. And we may even try and squeeze that in. Who knows? It may say on the video version of this on YouTube, it will say now whether we squeeze that in. I'm now one for little subtitles because that sounds fun, easy, nice and simple. And for you people listening on Spotify or any of the other podcast providers that we happen to be available on just yet, I guess wait and see. You never know. Could all work out great. But yeah, with that all done, let's crack on with the first of our topics. Here we go then. Away. Woo. So we're going to kick off this podcast, as we said before, by talking about all the ForgeWorld pricing fun. It's a fairly serious topic. It's not really something we're overly keen on doing here. I think normally we aim to kind of talk about the hobby and our own experiences within it, but this seemed like a big enough and or, important enough topic that it seemed like we should at least acknowledge it and not try and kind of shy away from having this kind of discussion within the hobby. Obviously, myself and Phil herald from the UK, so we are in no way affected by this change in ForgeWorld policy. In fact, actually, we only benefit from it because if we weren't such Warhammer World regulars, we would be able now to purchase ForgeWorld and have it delivered at a reduced rate for postage, which would be a thumbs up, really, for us. So I guess, really, I mean, from my limited perspective, it's all really positive. We now have cheaper delivery. Yay! But obviously acknowledge that there is a wider issue here at play. So, Phil, you're more the hardcore ForgeWorld consumer. How do you feel about all this crazy fun?
Well, like you said, from my personal point of view, it doesn't affect me and is only a good thing because actually I like the fact that, because it used to be you got charged 15% postage and now it's just a flat fee, which is great. I think it's like at least half, it's like £8 or maybe a bit less, which is good for us. But it seems like what they've done is if you're in another country, rather than charging you in pounds, they give you a fixed price in your local currency. So if you're in America, it'd be in US dollars. But what they've sort of done is they've rolled in a price hike for those people. So a lot of people are up in arms about that because now something is suddenly good 10 to 15% more expensive. And I think it does vary from model to model.
Would you say, because this is the thing, the language that's being used to describe this situation concerns me a little bit, because I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to call it a price hike, more of a readjustment or more of a kind of almost normalization of the pricing matrices or pricing kind of models that have been put in place. So for us in the UK, I mean, I've used this as a comparison the other day when I was looking at it and talking about it. If you were to look at the Space Marine range in the UK and you were to look at the not the tactical squad troops, but the Mark III Space Marine kit in the UK, a squad of Mark III Space Marines, 10 of them admittedly, is £30. Now, if I looked at that like for like type of model from ForgeWorld within the Horus Heresy range, for example, forgive me as I trawl through the ForgeWorld website momentarily. So if I find myself some Mark III models here, so I should have really prepped this all beforehand. I'm terribly sorry. But the point I was going to make is you can get 5 Mark Free Space Marines in the UK via ForgeWorld for around £36, right? So it's £6 more for half the amount of models. Now these are Mark III armor Space Marines, right? They're the same basic model that you could get. Now at the current exchange rate, if you were to buy these models at £36 in the US, those models would cost around $46, right? Is about the exchange rate maths, right? Now, ForgeWorld are now charging people $56 for this kit. So obviously, there is a $10 increase versus the GBP price. However, Games Workshop US are charging $50 for the 10 Space Marines, i.e. the 10 Mark III Space Marines from Games Workshop. So in America, the comparison is that it's actually cheaper representatively to buy the ForgeWorld models than it is representatively in the UK. So essentially, what I'm saying is what I'm seeing here is an adjustment to align the pricing in the US with the way that the pricing has been calculated in the UK. Because they have established their pricing in the US. And people have been comfortable paying $50 for these plastic Mark III Space Marines. But unlike us, the UK consumers, where they have established that difference in price, they haven't had that in effect for a number of years because the GBP to USD exchange rate has been so favourable for the Americans. Now, obviously, if you were to go back in time 3 years, now obviously there are various political things at play that result in this exchange rate being what it is. But if you were to go back 3 years where the exchange rate was closer to, say, 1.5, 1.6, all of a sudden your unit of Space Marines is more expensive than the $56 that they're asking for currently. So what I think is happening here is that Games Workshop and ForgeWorld are essentially working together to try and actually re-establish a more synchronized pricing model to what we're seeing here in the UK. And I think obviously this last 2 year or year long period where the US consumers have really enjoyed this, USD to GBP exchange rate that has been favorable for these guys, it wasn't always going to stay that way. And I think what's really good, if I can try and spin a positive for these guys, is that $56 price point is always going to be, barring any obviously increases in price that they implement because it's ForgeWorld, it's going to happen, but that's relatively set. And whether or not we go back to the days of $2 to a pound or $1.7 to a pound, you're still going to be paying $56 for this kit. Now, obviously, right now you're going, well, when will that happen? That's out of order. We're used to getting a better deal when we bought it in GBP because right now it is what it is. But you just never know. And I think the thing is what GW done here is they've looked at the overarching situation and they've said to themselves, we need this to be formulated in a more structured and understandable way, because it doesn't make any sense that there's that level of disparity between what our UK customers are spending on GW product and then what our UK customers are spending on ForgeWorld product versus the same comparables to our US, our Australian, our European customer base. Again, as stated from the outset, I'm not in any way negatively impacted by this stuff because, one, I hardly buy any ForgeWorld stuff, and two, I'm in the UK, so nothing's changed. But the way I look at this, I don't necessarily see it as the massive problem that people think it is. Do you think I'm talking out of turn there, Phil? Do I just not understand the plight of the little people with this?
Well, I think you're probably actually making a lot of sense, but I think a lot of people will basically it seems like as an English person not living somewhere else where it potentially costs more, is that because of the value of the pound dipped so much in the last few years, they've basically been enjoying a really good discount in effect, and that this readjustment is bringing it back to what it used to be worth, which in theory does actually make ForgeWorld sort of more money than they necessarily need to be making. But like you said, potentially this pricing is just a readjustment. I can understand that, and that seems to make sense. I don't think we need to get our sort of tinfoil hats on too much to evaluate it, but I think you do need to sort of understand that global trade and currencies is a sort of complex issue, and what we can do is just purely speculate and make a guess as to why they're doing it. I think a lot of the outrage that people have had is purely that they haven't, like the Warhammer community team in their post, they just said you're getting free shipping or under a certain amount, and they basically just listed loads of positives. They didn't actually warn anyone that the cost will go up for some people. And they've sort of tried to, a lot of them I think have seen it as a price hike, and that it's been hidden within this, you're getting a better, faster shipping value bundle deal. There might be more at play as well. So for example, there's a ForgeWorld warehouse opening in America. So that's obviously going to, maybe the cost of that warehouse is being factored into this increase in the price. Maybe it is just all to do with setting it at a fixed rate, or that they're potentially bundling in the import duty that you'd normally have to pay. Depends on which country you're in. So for example, in America, I'm pretty sure if you were to buy something from the UK, you'd be then having to have like stamp duty on it, which can be, when I bought something from America, sometimes it's astronomical. It's like 25% or more of the actual value of the item that I bought, which is massive. So if that's the difference at the moment in price, but then you don't have to pay it, it's equivalent of the same cost. Although I spoke to one person online and they were saying that they buy an awful lot of Krieg stuff from ForgeWorld, and that he's never had to pay import duty from and he's in America. So maybe that's just a bit hit and miss. Sometimes you have to pay it, sometimes you don't. I sort of feel sorry for the people that it does affect, and it means that they can't maybe buy the things they wanted to buy, because that's always going to be tough when something goes up in price. And I can sympathise with them, and I just think ForgeWorld maybe could have gone about it slightly better in terms of their messaging, just to flag up that prices might go up for some people. I don't think they necessarily have to explain why, though, because obviously it could be to do with the warehouse in America. It could be due to the currency exchange, or that they're trying to protect themselves, or like you said, they're trying to bring it in line with the Games Workshop store sort of percentage difference, because obviously ForgeWorld's a more premium product, so they're trying to represent that. But it's not really their responsibility to sort of give away their trade secrets and business practices to the public. So whatever reason for that price hike, I think they should have said that it was going to happen, but they shouldn't necessarily have to explain why.
No, I mean, I'm totally on board with you there, man. And, obviously from the outset, I wouldn't want to suggest that I'm not sympathetic to the fact that obviously an increase in price is not a pleasurable thing to have to endure. And obviously, if you were in the middle of a project, or you were working on like a Custodes army, or a Horus Heresy army, or a Necromunda gang, or whatever it was that you were doing within the ForgeWorld ecosystem, obviously if you enter into a situation now where your box of Custodes is costing you an extra $20-$30 than it was a month previously, well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's really disappointing, and something that they probably should have, actually messaged to guys. And also as well, I mean, I'm surprised with ForgeWorld not kind of doing that, because there's a fantastic example that happened in World of Tanks back in the day. So World of Tanks is a online massive multiplayer arena shooter thing for people driving around in virtual tanks and so on. I'm saying that as if I believe anyone who listens to this has never heard of World of Tanks before, but you know, I have to cover all bases in case this isn't a World of Tanks podcast after all. But one of the funniest things that ever happened with those guys is they entered into a situation once where they had a tank that was super overpowered, like it was crazy good, and the way that they decided to balance the tank was not to tweak it in any way, shape or form, but to inform their players that in a month's time this tank was going to go up in price by as much as 100%. So it was going to go from like $10 to $20 or whatever it was. So they basically put a line in the sand and they said, hey, on this date this price is going to increase. And obviously what that resulted in is like loads of consumers coming out and going, oh man, I got to get that tank before it gets expensive. So they sold loads of them, and that was like a genius move on their part. So I'm surprised in a way ForgeWorld didn't sort of think, ooh, what if we tell people that prices are going up on a date, and then at least we give people an opportunity who are in the middle of projects to get that last chance to enjoy this kind of this loophole, this situation that we find ourselves in presently, that the pound to US dollar rate or Aussie dollar or euro is so favourable to those other currencies. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it is a shame, because I think if I was in the middle of doing something and I was told that it would just cost exponentially more for no other reason than because, it would be disappointing. But at the same time, I kind of feel like, me personally, I would have to sort of take that on the chin and appreciate that these things are obviously, they are not, essential items. They're very much luxury items, and ultimately, they have their reasons for increasing their prices. And I sort of understand why the community team couldn't just come out and say that, because, who could say with any certainty? Because you're talking about exchange rates. For all we know, the US dollar could crash, and then before you know it, this thing is, infinitely cheaper in US dollars. You're talking about global currency exchanges and markets that fluctuate massively on a daily basis. So, they're talking about very contextual things that could or could not change. I mean, there's always a degree of risk in everything. So yeah, my thing is more from the business side of things with ForgeWorld. I can kind of understand why they've had to do this, because, as I say, the fact is that on the same principle, you in the US, you in Australia have already been paying way more than we do in the UK, if this is your comparison, based on current exchange rates. Because, again, if we go back to the £30 box of Mark III Space Marines, you're paying $50 for that in the US. Well, if you bought that on a current exchange rate, if I just do the very quick GBP to USD, Bosh, £1 sterling, 30. So today that would be $38.88. So you're paying $11 already more on that, plus obviously your taxes and all the other things you do. So,
And it sounds like Australia get it even worse than the Americans do. So sympathy for the guys down in Oz.
Absolutely, man. And don't get me wrong, I understand. I mean, again, I read up on, on how, people felt like that was going to impact the community and harm Games Workshop in the long run. And I agree. I think it will. I mean, but they have to have measured this risk, and, I hope they probably just think it's going to fizzle out, and then eventually people will get back on board with it, because, people are invested in the hobby, and people, and so on and so forth.
I definitely think that's probably going to be the case. It'll just take a while. But the weird thing is, if they had done this 3 years ago, people would be paying probably the exact same price then as they are now, and no one would have complained, because there would have been no price increase.
Well, if anything, there would have been probably a decrease by comparison, because you wouldn't have had those import taxes and other things. Potentially, I don't know.
But the thing is, it's just basically in that sort of 3-year window or 2-year window, the price has gone down for them while it stayed the exact same for us. And then it's going back up to them, for them, to sort of our level. So it's weird. I can understand that in terms of a business model, trading in a currency basically that isn't yours, for the buyer, and basically you are at the mercy of the currency, like the exchange rate is not a good way to run any business. And I'm surprised they've been doing it for such a sort of long time. Like every time like ForgeWorld has been around for what, 15, maybe 20 years or something, and if you're selling in different countries, you've always had to buy it in pounds sterling. That's a bit crazy.
No, absolutely.
Seems like they're really late to market in terms of sorting this sort of stuff out.
Well, I think as well, though, they've probably, I mean, okay, this is all speculation on my part, but I think Games Workshop has obviously enjoyed some incredible growth over the last 2 years. And with growth comes investment, right? So more and more people will be buying stocks in the company. More and more people will be taking the company much more seriously than they did 2 or 3 years prior. When you post the kind of profits that this company is managing to achieve, you know, people will take more interest in it. And as such, those interested parties will demand more of this company. And if this company has part of its business that is operating in an entirely bizarre kind of old school way with these GBP to wherever exchange rates and, you know, poor distribution and all this other stuff, you know, questions will be asked. People will be like, well, you've made X amount of profit from Citadel and Games Workshop books and all these licenses and everything else you got going on for you, but you're not making nearly as much money out of ForgeWorld. Why is that? And then, obviously, you as a business person or the head of Games Workshop need to look at that and go, well, clearly we're giving up a lot of margin because we're not selling in local currencies, which is obviously where we're seeing a lot of, you know, profit being driven from, even when people are selling them at discounts and all the rest of it in different markets and different traders and so on. But yeah, that's the thing. I just think, you know, ultimately it only makes sense. At the end of the day, if I want to buy a copy of a video game in America, there is a set price for a full price game, right? It's $59.99, $69.99. In the UK, that's £49.99, right? And the comparables is that, yeah, the £49.99 is still probably a lot cheaper than the $70, but they've established these pricing, you know, models, and for the most part they stick to them. And when they do that, those things kind of, you know, operate for themselves, and there are local taxes and local offices and local things to take into considerations in those businesses. And when you look at Games Workshop, you know, it's crazy that a part of their business isn't operating like that when everything else is. So I understand why they've done it. I do believe that they should have told people that this was what was going to happen. I think they probably should have offered a bit more of a rationale for why that was happening. And I don't really blame the community for responding the way they have. I think Games Workshop does need to be held to account for the way that it misled and ultimately missold this to the fan base. However, you know, speaking purely pragmatically, I can see it. I can see why they've done it. I just, you know, whether I agree with that practice or not is neither here nor there. But I definitely, the heart does go out to the people out there who are in the middle of projects who can't complete those, and fans of the hobby that feel alienated or isolated, not isolated, but, you know, alienated by GW and ForgeWorld because, you know, they've been priced out of the market. But you know,
I think it's like if it sort of feels like ForgeWorld, like if they had just done this in isolation, I mean, it would be annoying. But I think there's a lot of frustration at ForgeWorld at the moment because of the last chance to buy, sort of, let's call it a debacle, even though it's maybe not quite that bad. But the fact that so much stuff has been discontinued at very short notice, and sometimes when stuff has been discontinued, it's only been available to buy for a week, and customers don't have enough notice, and then sometimes the week after something else is being discontinued, and the week after that something else is being discontinued, which is a bit disheartening as a customer. But also, if you want to buy those stuff, it's quite difficult to do because sometimes you can't afford it, it's the wrong time of the month, you're not being paid yet, and if you want to buy a lot of them to like complete your army. So I ended up buying a load of the, like 3 of the ForgeWorld Lehman Russ, I'm going to say Annihilator tanks, when they were like one of the very first things to be discontinued. So I picked up those because I knew I really wanted them, and that would kind of complete my set of what I need to give me all the options for my Lehman Russ tanks, for my Krieg army. And then the very next week, like something else went on sale, and I was like, oh, I really want to be able to pick these up, but I've literally just spent like a couple of £100. And then shortly afterwards, it was like the Elysians went on sale, and it's like, I really want those. But I sort of ended up I sort of bit the bullet, and I sort of got some of those just because I knew I'd really want the models at some point in the far-flung future, and I'd kind of kick myself. And same with the Renegades. So the Renegades, I managed to pick up a couple of little bits just for them, and I sort of wished I'd picked up more, and I wanted to, and I sort of went back to buy them on the ForgeWorld website, and they disappeared because they sort of lasted for like a week and a half, and I was hoping they'd be around for 2 weeks, but they weren't. So I sort of missed out, and that's like quite frustrating as a customer. And I can imagine it's worse for other people because like I didn't need a Renegade army. I was just literally getting a couple of models just because I really like them, and I'm now using them for Kill Team. But it would have been great to have just got a couple more bits.
And imagine how much worse it would be, though, if they had done this the other way round. Imagine if they had done the price changes and then went last chance to buy. Like, that would have been... Like,
that would be kicker.
That would have been terrible. I mean, because they obviously knew all this stuff was on the horizon, right? So, I mean, if we can at least kind of paint them in a positive, at least they had the foresight to believe and understand that doing the last to buy promotions prior to then adjusting the pricing was the better of the two decisions. Unless, of course, next week last chance to buy comes back and a bunch more stuff goes on it. But I feel like we're out of that.
I think so. If we don our tinfoil hats, I have a theory for you.
Please.
And that basically the American warehouse is let's say blame. So what they've done is they've got a new warehouse in America for ForgeWorld stock. So I presume what they've done is this is all part of like optimizing and making ForgeWorld a bit more efficient and making sure they're maximizing their profit. So what they've done is we've got a new warehouse. Let's work out what doesn't sell, because why would we want to ship a load of it over there to sit in a warehouse when it's already sat in a warehouse in the UK and not selling? So they probably use that as a good excuse to cull all the ranges that aren't selling whatsoever. So the stuff that is going to be in that American warehouse is the stuff that's going to sell really well, because that's what sells really well in the UK already. So that's sort of why I think a lot of the stuff got discontinued. I mean, it's probably not just for American warehouses, probably a larger like refocus within the company as a whole to try and just make themselves more efficient and more profitable, which is why they're also sort of fixing the exchange rate by selling stuff in their local currencies, because that's more efficient and more profitable for them as well. It just sort of makes good business sense. Like, why would you not do it that way? So that's my theory. Like, they probably spent this year going, okay, let's work out what ForgeWorld's going to be, because it feels like a bit of a transition period at the moment. So getting rid of old stuff, focusing on new stuff, updating the website to make it work better, and sort out their international shipping and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, as Tin Hat, not Tin Pat. I don't know what Tin Pat is, but as Tin Hat theories go, that sounds pretty reasonable. But obviously, we'll never know for sure. But yeah, man. I mean, look, as I said from the outset, hasn't massively in any way affected me or you really in terms of our day-to-day hobby consumption and or habits. As I say, completely support all the community members out there who are showing, frustration towards this decision. I would not want to be in a situation where I felt like the hobby that I loved was trying to price me out or to, made it difficult for me to continue doing projects and so on. But at the same time, I always maintain the fact that, these things are expensive and they are themselves kind of, luxury items, as mad as that is to say out loud, but they really are. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, GW and ForgeWorld's prerogative to sell their products for what they feel is appropriate. And if this is the decision that they've settled upon, then ultimately this is the situation we find ourselves in. And, you know, I hope that people will adjust and that people will continue to support ForgeWorld, because I'm a big fan of what they've been doing. Adeptus Titanicus looks absolutely amazing. The work they've done on Necromunda has been fantastic. Blood Bowl is, you know, an absolutely incredible and well-supported game. You know, what ForgeWorld represents for the wider hobby is hugely important. You know, and obviously Horus Heresy has been, you know, prior to 8th edition, you know, an incredibly popular game and continues to be so. I really hope that, you know, we continue to see really great sculpts and really great minis out of those guys, and that people get on board with them again. But at the end of the day, you know, I can't blame anyone for walking away after this has taken place, because I can understand the difficulties that creates. But
yeah, I would say, just chipping in, like if someone does have like a problem with the pricing, or if you're someone that isn't affected by it like us, but you sort of feel like it's pretty poor form, or that they should change it, or, you know, just what I would do is, rather than rant and rave about it online, because that's not really going to do much, but I would actually just email ForgeWorld sort of in a very nice, polite, calm manner, say how you feel, because the more people that do email ForgeWorld, the more they will have a reason to sort of listen to the community. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's necessarily going to make them change their mind. I think, you know, they set their prices and that's not going to change. But, you know, maybe for future, they sort of learn their lesson about, you know, how they communicate what they're doing within the company.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I think, you know, there's a lot of people getting very, very, you know, irate about things on YouTube and other social media platforms, and I understand those frustrations, but you're absolutely right. You can make yourself heard by emailing those guys, their customer services, and, you know, having a fair and rational kind of dialogue with them. I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's not good, but it's, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it somewhat is what it is, really. So yeah,
no one's burning their army.
Yeah, don't burn that army. It's become more expensive. Think of the resale value. I mean, I suppose that's the one positive, right? If you've got a ForgeWorld collection in the US or Australia, your stuff's just got way more valuable on a resale market value. I mean, look at that.
That's true. Yeah.
It's gone well. It's turned out good for you. So now we got all that serious chat out of the way, let's talk about the new Space Wolves Codex. Phil and I really aren't that necessarily super into the Space Wolf army, but it's a new book, and we felt like what we should do with new books is try and offer something of an insight into it, more kind of talking about specific units and just kind of having a general chat about it. So what I've done is I've prepared a few little kind of points and things, so I'm going to kind of read them out and have you know, Phil offer some insights or ask some questions, and just kind of have a bit of a dialogue about the things in the Space Wolves book that are unique to Space Wolves and kind of interesting. So, I mean, from the outset, well, actually, Phil, have you got anything to add at this early juncture, or would you like me just to get straight in to the Space Wolves stuff?
Space Wolf, what now?
Space Wolf, what now? Ooh, what?
Yes, yeah. Let's just crack on.
Let's just crack on. Fair enough. So, a couple quick little bits of general housekeeping, stuff you've heard before about Space Wolves, I'm sure. But essentially, the Space Wolves are a Space Marine chapter, and as such, they shall know no fear, which is somewhat standard. In addition, they have the Defenders of Humanity ability, assuming they're a battle-forged army, of course. That's the whole they secure objective thing. And then they also have Hunters Unleashed, which basically means that their characters add one to its hit roll in the fight phase when it's heroically intervened, and it can heroically intervene 6 inches. So their characters are a little better because of heroic intervention, and otherwise they've got generic Space Marine stuff.
Now, let me just chip in here. Am I right in thinking that doesn't affect vehicles? Is it like the other Space Marine chapters where it's sort of just troop choices?
Correct, yes. So only...
So Grimnar on his sleigh doesn't get the chapter ability.
Oh, that's interesting, actually. You've asked a good question from the outset. Infantry, bike, cavalry, and Dreadnought units. And I do believe Big Boy Logan Grimnar is a cavalry unit, but let me just double check that right now. He is a Imperium Adeptus Astartes Space Wolves. And he's also a character vehicle. Ooh.
No.
So Logan Grimnar, when taken upon his Storm Rider, has not the ability to heroically intervene 6 inches. But he is a character, so... Ooh, hang on. Maybe he doesn't get... Ooh, you've created an infinite loop, even from the outset. Oh, God. If only I'd thought about this stuff. Is this something people on the internet have been talking about already? Have you...
Well, I'm in a WhatsApp chat for the No Retreat people, alumni, effectively, and it got brought up there. And I think the general consensus was that he didn't get it, and that was a bit stupid.
Yeah.
So I thought that was my one smart contribution to this this chat.
So, abilities. In your army, a Battleforged troops unit in Space Wolves detachment gain the Defenders of Humanity ability. In addition, infantry, bike, cavalry, and dreadnought units, other than servitor units, in Space Wolf detachments also gain Hunters Unleashed. In any turn in which your unit with this ability made a charge move, was charged, or made a heroic intervention, you add 1 to your hit rolls in the fight phase. In addition, characters with this ability can perform a heroic intervention if... after the enemy has completed blah 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 heroic intervention.
Maybe he can because he's a character.
Oh, exactly. It calls out characters specifically, but then it says infantry by infinite loop. Who knows?
Maybe it's characters that are infantry or cavalry can do that, but because obviously he's a vehicle, not an infantry. He can't, and he can basically only do it when he's on foot, which I think would sort of make sense.
I agree, it sort of does make sense. But if it were me, I'd just be like, well, here's the thing, right? He's a character, so he can heroically intervene 3 inches. He just can't heroically intervene 6.
Yeah.
Because it's a different ability. So he can heroically intervene, just not 6 inches.
Yeah, the fact that he can move 10, I think, sort of makes up for that fact.
Oh, I think 10's a terrible movement. I was just about to get into that. I was going to start by talking about Logan Grimnar.
Oh, okay.
So we may as well talk about Logan Grimnar.
Let's keep going on about him.
Exactly. Well, you've done well there, mate. You've done well there. So I was going to talk about Logan Grimnar. So Logan Grimnar is obviously the chapter master. Not that it's necessarily called the chapter master. I think it's like a great wolf or the big wolf or the big bad wolf or whatever he is. He's the big wolf man. Wolfie McWolfington. Logan Grimnar. So, if you take Logan Grimnar on his own, without his Storm Rider, he is a single model one with the axe Morkai or something it's called, some sort of cornate axe that he picked up once upon a time, and a Storm Bolter. Your army can only include 1 Logan Grimnar. He has movement 5, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2, strength and toughness 4, wounds 7. 7? It's pretty hefty, isn't it? 7. Mm-hmm. And 5 attacks.
Is this base when he's not in the sleigh?
That's correct. That is base when he's not upon the sled. And he's got leadership at 9 and a 2+ save, as is standard for a man in Terminator armor. The Storm Bolter is a Storm Bolter. Nothing special about that. But the Axe Morkai is a one-handed option, which is strength +2, -3 AP and D3 damage. Or you can use it two-handed, and in doing so, it becomes strength ×2, -3, a flat 3 damage, but subtract 1 from your hit rolls. Very important. His abilities include the Great Wolf. You can reroll failed hit rolls for friendly Space Wolf units within 6. High King of Fenris. You do not need to make morale tests for friendly Wolf Guard units within 6 of Logan Grimnar. The Belt of Rust, which gives him a 4+ invulnerable save. Yeah, it's alright. And a teleport strike ability, i.e. deep strike, for those who remember the universal special rule of deep strike. It's alright. I mean, you know, he's a Space Marine captain in Terminator armor with an axe. He's okay. I'm struggling with Logan Grimnar. I wanted him to be cooler. He's alright, but...
Does he have any aura abilities?
He has the reroll all to hits, and he allows Wolfguard to be fearless when they're within 6 of him.
Is that just hits in close combat, or is it shooting as well?
All to hits.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good.
So it's Chapter Master, right? He's the same as a Chapter Master. So he does the same thing a Chapter Master does. And I suppose as well, because he makes Wolfguard fearless, you can combo him up with a lot of Wolfguard Terminators and have like a super durable wall of things that are rerolling to hit and not running away, which is kind of cool. But I mean, how often do you ever see Terminators run away anyway? I mean, they're normally Leadership 8, Leadership 9, and they're normally only taken in units of 5, which normally means they ain't running anyway, so who cares? And the Battle Russ, a 4-up invuln, it's alright. It's, it's an Iron Halo, right? I mean, whoop-de-doo. I was expecting more from him. I really was. And I mean, for the points you pay for him, I'm not sure. So, to clarify, Logan Grimnar is costing you 170 points. He's not worth 170 points.
Should we do the Gilliman test? So, basically, compare him to Gilliman and look at the price difference and choose which one you would rather pick.
Well, he is worth... Gilliman is worth 2 1/3 Logan Grimnars. So 2 Logan Grimnars is 340 points. Gilliman is now 400 points, I believe.
Oh, he's gone up. He's quite expensive, but still cheap at the same time.
Yeah, I think he's still 400 points. I think he used to be 350. I think he's gone up to 400 points now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fairly confident that's how much a Roberto Gilliman is. So if you say he is roughly 2 1/4, 2 1/3, to a Roberto Gilliman, he's still nowhere near as good. Roberto Gilliman allows you to reroll all hits, all wounds. His weapon is terrifying. His movement is like 8 or 9. He's got a sword that will cut through anything. He's got a heavy bolter. The man's a lunatic.
And he comes back when he dies.
He comes back when he dies. Once per game, though. Once per game, not more than once. But still...
I think his problem is he's too good. I'm being a bit unfair when I'm saying let's do the comparison game. But that's also my point of, it has to be something really special to be as good as Gilliman.
Oh, God, yeah. But that's the thing, right? I mean, like, you look at Azrael. So a more fair comparison is Azrael for the Dark Angels. Now, Azrael is as many points. Maybe... now we're asking... I think Azrael's about the same points. Like he might be a 180. Forgive me, I don't have that reference here. But Azrael is so much better than this. So much better. He's got a better sword. Okay, fair enough. Logan Grimnar doesn't have a sword. He has an axe, but he has a better melee weapon. He has a combi plasma. He gives a 4-up invuln to any model within 6. He grants you an additional command point if he's your warlord. I mean, the guy is so much more versatile than this is. This is just some dude with an axe in Terminator armor. Which, to be honest with you, you could achieve the same outcome if you just took a Wolf Lord in Terminator armor with an axe. And the Wolf Lord in Terminator armor with an axe, I think, is about 50 points cheaper than this.
True. Does he have a fixed warlord trait?
He does have a fixed warlord trait as well.
Warlord traits are quite interesting, and ironically, they sort of FAQ'd them, so they basically came out and released the correct warlord traits before the codex came out, if I remember rightly.
That is absolutely correct.
The UK codexes are all basically printed wrong, and they basically decided after writing the UK one to change the warlord traits to be slightly more in keeping with the theme of Space Wolves. They fixed all the international copies, or not necessarily international language, should I say. But then the UK English ones were still incorrect. So now, if you can do, what are they called? Is it a saga? Am I right?
Yeah. So he is, unless of course it's changed in the PDF. I'm just pulling that up now. Logan Grimnar is Saga of Majesty. Here it is. Warlord traits and sagas. Here we go. So so Saga of Majesty. The Warlord speaks with the wisdom of ages, inspiring his men to to acts of valor and greatness. If this unit is affected by this saga, they automatically pass morale tests. In addition, if they are a character, increase the range of this aura ability by 3, e.g. the Great Wolf, Jarfrinners, excluding exploding, healing balm, battlesmith abilities of relic fang, and effects of psychic powers. Slay the enemy warlord with your warlord. So you need to slay the enemy warlord with Ogun Grimnar to get this. And they automatically passes morale tests. But you had that already. Hang on. Yeah, no, it is weird. So if the unit affected by this saga, they automatically pass morale tests. In addition, if they are a character, increase the range of any aura abilities. Oh, fine. So his reroll to hits goes from 6 to 9. It's all right.
No, too bad. Makes it quite a bigger bubble.
Yeah, but you got to hoof him up the other end of the table and kill a warlord to get it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That ain't happening. And if it does, he's nowhere near anything that benefits from that ability. No, he's terrible.
Can he not have a teleport? Is it teleport Homer, the one that allows you to reappear somewhere else on the board?
Yeah, obviously that is a rule for Space Marine Terminators, not for the Wolf Guard.
Okay.
So the Wolf Guard, let me just find the Wolf Guard page, because I wasn't going to talk about Wolf Guard because they were pretty unsubstantial. But you've brought it up, so I'll try and find it. Hang on. Wolf Guard Terminators. Teleport Strike. Storm Shields. Crux Terminatus. War Gear. Any more? No, they don't have teleport hammers. So, doesn't matter. So you can't get him in there, kill a warlord, and teleport Homer out.
Okay.
So he's trash from the outset, which is great. 170 points of worthlessness. Not worthlessness, just not very good. And then if you take him on the Storm Rider, his wounds increase to 12. His toughness increases to 6. His attacks, leadership, and save stays the same. And then he also has additional attacks. So if he is at full wounds, he gains an additional 6 attacks, obviously for the little wolfies that are carrying him along. All his weapons remain the same. He's still got a storm bolter and the axe. And then the 2 little wolfies do Flurry of Teeth and Claw, which is, basically make a number of additional attacks at strength 5 -1 damage. And when he is on this chariot, he can re-roll charges.
That's pretty good.
It's all right, but again, if we refer to how many points he is, 2 seconds. Logan Grimnar on Storm Rider is 190 points, so it's actually only 20 points more for a bucket load of more wounds, and actually a bit more versatility. That's
and he's still under the wound cap, so he can't be shot at.
No, he's 12 wounds. You can shoot him all day.
Oh, okay.
Which again was mental, because I sort of thought to myself, if he was 9 wounds, like a Roberto Gilliman, if he was 9 wounds, you could run him up with some Wolf Cavalry or some Thunderwolf Cavalry and not have him shot to bits. But he's not, so...
Ironically, if you were to literally put them next to each other and compare them, I bet Gilliman will be bigger for 2 models.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, at least in height anyway, maybe not in lengthways.
Well, his base is a similar size. It's a weirdo. The Logan model is on a flyer base, or on one of those flyer oval bases, whereas the Roberto Guillermo model, to the best of my understanding, is on something like
round.
It's a round. It's like the same one the armatures use from.
It's bigger than the Dreadnought, I think.
Yeah, he's got a wide stance. He's got those big balls that he doesn't want to crush up between his legs. Big wide stance. But yeah, look, I mean, it was worth talking about Logan Grimnar because he is the chapter master. He is worthless at 170 points in Terminator armor. He's more useful at 190 points on this sled of his. I don't think you'll ever see anyone take him. At least in 7th edition. This is one of the things, right? If we can talk about him in 7th edition for a moment, not to dwell on it by any stretch of the imagination. He was actually really good in 7th edition. Unless someone shot him with a grav cannon. If someone shot him with a grav cannon, it was game over. Because he was a vehicle and he could still be immobilized, which was hilarious. But, bar that little loophole, if no one shot him with a grav cannon, he was a chariot. So because he was a chariot, you, the controlling player, could say where the shots go. So if someone says to you, I'm going to shoot all these bolters at Logan Grimnar, you went, cool, they're strength 4 against my armor 11. I'm going to tell you that you're hitting the chariot, which means you can never even glance it. And then if you're shooting him with a las cannon, you can go, okay, cool, I'll take it on my 2-up save or my 3-up invuln, I think he had. Or it might have been a 4-up invuln even. But, but even if you shot him with that las cannon, you only did 1 wound to him. So you could then cycle between the las cannon, cycle between Logan Grimnar and the chariot could only ever be glanced. So he was ridiculously powerful in 7th edition. I never understood why no one ever took him. He was amazing, but that's behind us now, and now he's terrible again. Way. So with Logan out of the way, let's talk about one of the other named characters, old Nigel the Stormcaller. Obviously Nigel the Stormcaller, but obviously we all like to call him Nige. Old Nige. So Nigel is essentially the Master Psyker McWolf. There are 2 flavors of Nigel. So you can either have him in runic armor, or you can have him in Terminator armor. The runic armor is obviously his old kind of power armor. You didn't see me do the air abbreviation thing there, but power armor variant. And then the Terminator armor is the more kind of new, widely available version. In either instance, his rules are basically the exact same, except for the fact that when he's in runic Terminator armor, he has a 4+ invulnerable save, whereas if he's in runic armor, he has a 5+ invulnerable save, and he also gains access to teleport strike if he is in Terminator armor. But the profile is movement 6 in regular armor, movement 5 in Terminator armor, weapon skill, ballistic skill 2+, strength and toughness 4, 5 wounds in runic armor, 6 wounds in Terminator armor, 3 attacks in both profiles, leadership 9, and 2+ save, either way you look at it. His bolt pistol is a bolt pistol. His Nightwing is a bird that hangs around with him and goes out and pecks people in the eyes. Has a range of 12, assault D6, strength 3, AP 0, 1 damage. And the staff of the Stormcaller is strength +2, -1 AP, and D3 damage. Nigel can have the ability to manifest 2 psychic powers in each friendly psychic phase and attempt to deny 2 psychic powers in each enemy psychic phase. His special rules are Lord of Tempest. You can add 1 to any psychic test you make with Njal the Stormcaller. Psychic Hood, which is a psychic hood. I'm sure everyone knows what that is. If you don't, it's basically you're within 12 inches. You add 1 to your deny rolls. Runic Terminator armor and runic armor gives invulnerable saves. I talked about that already. And Staff of the Stormcaller. You can reroll 1 failed Deny the Witch test for Najal Stormcaller in each opponent's psychic phase. You can reroll denies. So he's a good denial character because he can reroll, and if he's within 12, he's adding 1 to his denial roll. So he's very good at putting within 12 inches and stopping things from happening. And also as well, the Tempestus or Tempest psychic powers are relatively short range, and there are some interesting elements to that as well. Nigel, in his various forms, will cost you... no, wrong page, sorry. Nigel will cost you 138 points regular, or 153 points if you take him in Terminator armor. Again, I'm going to say I don't think he's very good. I don't want this to be the recurring theme of this, but again, if you compare him to the Dark Angels book and you compare him to Ezekiel wipes the floor with this dude. Like, Ezekiel's got a same armor save, he's got better gear, he's got... It's arguable whether his psychic powers are better or not, but Ezekiel is cheaper by a considerable margin And yeah, again, it's one of those ones where I sort of look at this guy and I compare him to other casters in the game. Aldred Ulfran, which is obviously one of the top tier casters in the game, would wipe the floor with this guy, and has much greater levels of versatility within your army. I'm not sure what the deal is with Nige. What do you think of what I've explained to you for Nige, the Stormcaller?
Well, how does he compare to a regular librarian? I presume he's better, but just not worth the points increase. Is that right?
Yeah. So your standard Rune Priest can manifest 2 psychic powers and deny 1. So he's not really even that much better than one of those ones. So yeah, I mean, it's that thing where it's like, in terms of his ability to output psychic powers, the fact that he can deny 2 psychic powers and that he has the reroll is a big win. The problem is that, again, most of the big casters in game are going to throw loads and loads and loads of spells at you anyway. And also, if you're up against some of the more powerful ones, they're going to be within range. So, I mean, you know, you plonk the jar, the Stormcaller in front of Magnus the Red, it ain't going to matter how much he tries to deny it. It's all going to kind of go wrong for him in the end anyway. So this is the problem with him. I don't get what you would use him for. I kind of understand the heritage of the character, because in the 7th edition or 6th edition rules for him, he really was about shutting down psychic powers, but he used to have this really awesome gathering storm ability. So every turn that went by, he would trigger more and more like storm abilities. It was like the storm caller or whatever, and he would be like, lightning bolts and winds and crazy stuff. He was like a walking tornado. Now he's just a psyker in Terminator armor with a bird.
Well, I was going to say, I absolutely love it. It's like a raven or crow or something, and I absolutely love that part of the model. It's like, I would love that as a bit, just for my bits kit, and to use elsewhere, but I imagine it's quite thoroughly attached to the rest of them, so it'd be quite difficult to peel off.
It's actually a separate piece, actually, the little birdie.
Is it?
It is. Yeah. On the Terminator one, it's a separate bit to him.
Oh, I might have to... So I want to pay £15 for a bird, maybe.
It's going to be one hell of a bird.
For a future conversion project, maybe. So are there any... Oh, actually, there's 2 versions of him. So which one are you talking about? The Terminator armor one, or the one where the bird looks even hokier because it's like an 80s sculpt?
So the one where he's in Terminator armor, the bird is separate.
Okay, cool. That's the one I was looking at.
Yeah, the one where he is in runic armor, or basically power armor, the bird is very firmly attached to his hand.
Yeah, it really looks like it says resin, but it clearly used to be the metal sculpts, and they've just converted it to fine cast.
No, absolutely. It's weird as well, because like, I do actually quite like that crow model on his shoulder in Terminator armor. It looks quite cool with it squawking away, as it were. I believe if you're in the market for bird companions, the Inquisitor Cortez, I think his bird is separate as well, or maybe it's
cool. Yeah, his one looks really good. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're in the market for birds, that's the way. Or you could just get a razor wing flock. That's an option also.
Yeah, it's weird looking through the range. Like, it's so mismatched. I mean, probably every range has it, but you've got the Rune Priest in regular Space Marine armor. Looks absolutely amazing, but that's resin. And then you look at the Rune Priest in Terminator armor, who is literally probably one of the oldest models like on this web store. He is like a proper 80s style model. I can't confirm. I don't actually know how old he is, but he looks like one of the earliest forms of Terminators.
Yeah, no, I mean, to put it in context, he's on an old, 24mm base or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, he's crazy looking, isn't he? Especially when he's on the same page as like Arjak, who looks like a kick-ass, cool, new Terminator. And then you've got It just looks like he's got a bit of a weird sort of like flight cap on almost. It looks ridiculous.
Yes, it's super weird looking. So anyway, are there any good named characters in the Codex?
Well,
such as Ragnar Blackmane, or maybe Ulrich the Slayer.
Well, we can talk about Ragnar Blackmane. Ulrich the Slayer was going to be my next one, so I'll give you a bit of insight on Ulrich the Slayer, shall we? Let's do that one. I don't mind Ulrich the Slayer. As chaplains go, he's a good chaplain. But anyway, right, so...
I see where this is going.
Yeah, I do. So he's movement 6, weapon skill ballistic 2, strength toughness 4, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 9, 3+ armor save. He's got a plasma pistol, a Crozius Arcanum, frag grenades, and crack grenades. Slayer's Oath is one of his abilities, so you can reroll failed hit rolls in the fight phase for friendly Space Wolves. Within 6 of this model. If Ulrich the Slayer kills any enemy character or monster, then the rest of the battle you can add 1 to any wound rolls you make in the fight phase for a friendly Space Wolf unit within 6 of him. So that's better than most other chaplains' abilities.
Yeah.
I don't think there's another chaplain out there that has an ability that buffs the to wound rolls if you fulfill a certain criteria. Again, to talk about Dark Angels by comparison, Asmodai doesn't give you that kind of ability. He's got these weird swords that don't have any AP but do a lot of damage. This is quite an interesting rule for what it is. And then if you compare it to Lamartez, or potentially you could compare it to Astaroth from the Blood Angels, Lamartez is really good with Death Company because he allows you to reroll charges, and he himself is a combat monster. And then Astaroth has a load of other kind of perks and abilities, but this I think is quite interesting. Ulrich the Slayer has a 4+ invulnerable save and healing balms. At the end of your movement phase, Ulrich the Slayer can attempt to heal a single model. To do so, select a Space Wolf infantry, bike, or cavalry unit within 3 of him. If that unit contains a wounded model, it immediately regains up to D3 lost wounds. A unit can only be targeted for healing balm once each turn, which essentially means that he is also a apothecary, which is a big plus, right? Like, so having the ability to be an apothecary in addition to being a chaplain is something really cool. And to be fair, healing balm is a generic wolf priest, which is the name for chaplains in the Space Wolf ability. But it's cool that within the Space Wolves you get an amalgamation of apothecaries and chaplains, making Ulrich the Slayer possibly one of the few viable chaplain options out there, because you're not only getting the chaplain perks, but you're also getting a number of the apothecary perks as well. And he's relatively fairly priced at a cool... Where are you, good sir? Where have you gone now? Ulrich the Slayer, 110 points, which is pretty good. So, yeah, if I was to say, is there a good named character, he's probably the one I'd go with so far, Ulrich the Slayer, even though he's a chaplain, and chaplains in all other instances aren't that impressive. But again, in the pointing that they've done with this, okay, he's got a 3+ armor save, but he's got a 4+ invern. He also has Wolf Helm of Russ. All friendly Space Wolf units within 9 of Ulrich's hair can use his leadership instead of their own, which again is another good buff. So this is the thing, right? Like, he as a character has a lot of versatility. He's not the best character out there by any stretch of the imagination, but he's good. He's not phenomenal, but he's good. So yeah, if you were asking me what a good character is, Ulrich the Slayer. Quite like him.
Nice. And what about Ragnar Blackmane?
Well, so Ragnar Blackmane. So Ragnar Blackmane is a single model armed with a Frostfang, a bolt pistol, frag, and crack grenades. Only model these models. Ragnar's unit may include 2 loyal Fenrisian wolves, with names I won't even begin to attempt to pronounce, but one of them starts with an S and the other one starts with U. I think it's Svinga and Olkla. We'll go with that. But nonetheless, Ragnar Blackmane is movement 6, weapon skill ballistic 2+, strength and toughness 4, 5 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 9, 3+ save. He has the Belt of Rust, so another 4+ invulnerable save. He has Warhowl. You can reroll any failed charge rolls for friendly Space Wolf units other than vehicles within 6 of Ragnar Blackmane, which again, good. That is good. Jarl of Fenris is JRL. I don't know what the exact pronunciation is. Something Nordic.
Jarl, I imagine.
Yeah, Jarl. We'll go with that. You can reroll hit rolls of 1 for friendly Space Wolf units with 6 of Ragnar Blackmane. He's a captain ability. Shock horror. Insane Bravado. If Ragnar Blackmane performs a heroic intervention, increases attack characteristics by D3 until the end of the turn. It's good. Loyal Companions. The death of either of those two Fenrisian wolves is ignored for the purposes of morale. They are also considered to have the character keyword for the purposes of shooting attacks, so you can't target them either. Their stats are, by the way, movement 12, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 7+, strength and toughness 4, 1 wound, 3 attacks, 4 up leadership, and a 6 up save. So they're not super good, but there are a few extra little wolves that you can have.
Why have they got a ballistic skill of 7 up rather than just like a dash?
Nothing has a dash in this game anymore. Even if you're
stuff that can't shoot.
Yeah, well, if it's a 7+, it just means you can't ever hit.
Well, you could buff it to get +1 or something.
You could do.
But I mean, I presume they've got no ability to shoot, so why put 7+ on that? I mean, I can't say I've ever noticed that before.
Well, it's like with
it's rare when you find stuff that don't shoot, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you look at things with like armor save 7+, you can buff those up through terrain and other things to get increased. And the same is true of these guys. So I guess if you cast some kind of spell on them or give them some kind of thing, then they can increase their ballistic skill. Although, interestingly, I was under the impression you always hit on a 6. So theoretically, you could have...
No, it's a 1 is always a miss, but a natural 6 isn't an auto pass.
Okay, well then in which case, you can buff
because that's why they redid that new orc rule, which they previewed at Nova Open. So basically, if you hit on a natural 6, you do hit, and then you get to shoot again with that weapon. And that was a rule that they had. It was like a chapter tactic type thing. They put in chapter approved, but now they basically announced that in the new codex that's a fixed rule.
Gotcha.
Regardless of which one. 6 isn't always a hit.
So basically, if you put them on an Icarus autocannon or quad gun or whatever they're called now, and you're firing at a wave serpent that isn't LL-TOC and hasn't used vectored engines, you could the wolves could shoot them and hit them on 6s because they get +1 to hit anything with the fly keyword on the Icarus gun. There you go. So a wolf can shoot if it wants to.
Is that how the Icarus still works? I got the impression it was all automated now, but I could be wrong.
Oh, you could be. I mean, I'm making some sweeping assumptions here based on how things are done.
Because no one's played them since.
No one plays them. That's how I'm ruling it. That's fine. Everyone agrees, right? Yeah, good. Everyone out there, we're all happy with that. Yeah. No. Anyway. But yeah, Ragnar Blackmane's coming in at a cool 141 points, which is where the problem is, because again, he's too expensive. He's too expensive. If Ulrich the Slayer is 110 points, and he's basically the same, except he doesn't let people reroll charges, and but he lets them reroll all hits in combat, and he can increase their to wound rolls by 1, and he can heal things. Right? If he's 110 points, how did a captain with, and I mean, again, we didn't talk about this, but his weapon is like, whatever. Come on now. Oh, I've lost my page. I had it all done. His weapon is the Frostfang, which is, actually, all right. Credit where credit's due. The Frostfang's pretty cool. So it's strength +1, -4, 2 damage. It's all right, isn't it?
Yeah. Is his price including the wolves, or are they
they're 8 points?
Okay. Each.
Oh, that's a good question. I think they're 8 points for the pair.
Okay.
I think they're 8 points a pair of wolves. Trying to do some fruit and veg store manager type talk there. £1 a pair.
Get your wolves. Get your wolves.
Where are your wolves here? Points per model. No, yeah, so they're 8 points each. So it's 16 points for that. So if you want him with his 2 wolves, that will increase his points cost by 16, making him 157 points. It's all right, isn't it? But there you go.
Price of a Lehman Russ, basically.
Price of a Lehman Russ, and nowhere near as good.
Which can segue into the there's no Lehman Russ Primarch model.
Well, that's what you think. I've got the book in front of me, and there is no Lehman Russ model. That's correct. What was interesting is that they've actually brought back Harold. I don't think he's actually supposed to pronounce it Harold, but they brought back Harold Deathwolf, which is cool. So if you don't remember, Harold was in the 5th edition Space Wolf book. Oh no, he wasn't even in the 5th edition. I think he was some weird, like, special one-off box thing. But they did this Wolf Lord. For anyone who doesn't remember Harold, he was the Thunderwolf Wolf Lord with the single Frost Axe and Storm Shield. He's the one that basically everyone wanted. Everyone always talked about how Canis Wolfbane, or whatever his name was. Where is he now? I don't even think he's in this book anymore.
Has he got a model on the website?
Yeah. So hang on, I'm just now that I've said these words out loud. Oh, here you go. Yeah, so everyone always in the 7th edition book for Space Wolves, Canis Wolfborn or Wolfbane or whatever he was called was the only named character on Thunderwolf, and the guy, old Harold, he was just Lord on Thunderwolf. So they changed him to a Thunderwolf Lord. But everyone always used to use this guy because he was much better equipped than Canis ever was. But they've actually gone back to calling him a named character, which is quite cool. So Harold Deathwolf. Again, forgive my terrible pronunciation. It's a single model armed with Glacius, a bolt, pistol, frag and crack grenades. He rides atop his Thunderwolf Ice Tooth, who attacks with crushing teeth. So on and so forth. So he has movement 10, weapon skill, ballistic skill of 2+, strength and toughness 4, 7 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 9, and 3+ save. The Glacius is a +2 strength, -2 damage. If a model suffers any unsaved wound from this weapon but is not slain, roll a d6. On a 6, that target suffers a mortal wound. So not a bad thing at all. And crushing teeth and claws. And after the model with his mount makes a close combat attack, you can attack with its mount. Make 3 additional attacks using this weapon profile. So strength 5, -1, 1 damage. He has the abilities of Expert Hunter. During deployment, you can set up Harold ready to outflank his prey instead of placing him on the battlefield. At the end of any of your movement phases, he can join the battle. Set him up within 12 of any battlefield edge and more than 9 away from the enemy. He also has a Storm Shield, so he has a 3-up invulnerable save. Thumbs up for him. He can also reroll hit rolls of 1 for any Space Wolf unit within 6. He's the Lord of the Wolfkin. All friendly Thunderwolf units and friendly units of Fenris Wolves and Cyber Wolves within 6 of the Harold can use his leadership instead of his own. And the Mantle of the Troll King, add 1 to any saving throws except saving throws using vulnerable saves you make for Harold against shooting attacks. So he's effectively got a 2+ armor save against all shooting attacks.
Oh, nice.
How many points is he? I might have spoke too soon when I was talking about Ulrich the Slayer. I might have gotten ahead of myself. Harold is 188 points. He's all right. He's quite expensive, but he's all right. I think that's actually pretty good, actually. Maybe he wears the crown for the best of the named characters.
Wow.
I mean, this is the thing, right? Thunderwolves are still good. They're not 7th edition good. They're still good. He's a good character, and he buffs that. So if you're looking for something that still gives you that sort of Space Wolfy flavour and still gives you that kind of Wolf Cavalry flavour, I think this guy probably is an auto-include for anyone looking to do Thunderwolf armies. So yeah, no, maybe between him and Ulrich the Slayer. But again, I don't think very many people are going to take Ulrich the Slayer because I just don't think very many people probably will, just because of the fact he's still a chaplain. Whether or not he's a better chaplain is still somewhat redundant, because I don't see anyone taking apothecaries either. So amalgamation of two redundant classes doesn't necessarily make him a viable class. He is better, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to always want him. But this guy's quite nice, old Harold. I don't know if I'm pronouncing him. I might have to try and put some kind of more sort of Norse spin on how you pronounce this, but it looks like more or less like Harold for me. Maybe it's Harlard, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, any questions so far, Phil? I think we're done with named characters now. I kind of feel like we've exhausted all of that material.
No, it seems pretty good. My only question, not about named characters, but just in general, are because I know they've now got access to Primaris Marines plus some of the more generic Space Marine units, and it was just what are they?
So they have access to every flavour of Primaris Marine that you've come to expect over the years. So they've got the Primaris Battle Leader, so that's basically your Primaris Captain. You've got the Primaris Wolf Lord. The Primaris Battle Leader is the Lieutenant, and the Primaris Wolf Lord is the Primaris Captain. They've then also got... Where is he now? So Primaris Wolf Priest, which is basically the Primaris chaplain model. One thing that's actually quite interesting, and I don't want to speak out of turn too much too quickly. Oh, I think I'm correct when I say this. I'm going to just double check it one last time. Bush. They might be the only Space Marine book not to include a Primaris Apothecary. Yeah, no Primaris Apothecary. So they're the only people that don't have access to a Primaris Apothecary in the Space Marines right now. Other than Red Scorpions or something, I don't know. They probably didn't get it either. But yeah, unless I'm misreading this or I haven't found something, they don't have access to the Apothecary because their chaplains, their wolf priests have incorporated that that Apothecary role.
Well, weirdly, they do get the model on the Games Workshop website.
Okay, I'm gonna once again, or unless the Apothecary is an elite choice. Oh, it could be an elite choice.
Maybe that's where they've.
Hang on, let me. I've got a bunch of post-it notes all over the place on this bloody thing, and never did I think to check. Primaris Ancient, Wolfguard, Venerable Dreadnoughts, Wolfen, Redemptor Dreadnoughts, Murdered Fangs. Going back on myself just to be sure. Yeah, not in here, unless I've missed it. Where do they appear on the website?
Under the Space Wolves Army.
So I got their HQ open on my page.
Oh, I don't know which. Yeah, hold on. It's
and
just.
Then I'll check the elites. View all on the elites. Yeah, they do give them the model. Unless I feel like a lunatic saying this out loud, like I've missed something. Right, okay. Here we go. I'm going to read them all. I'm going to read them all in order. In fact, here we go. Yeah, so read them all in order. Logan Grimnar on Storm Rider, Ardrak Rockfist, Bjorn the Foul-Handed, Nigel the Stormcaller in Terminator Armor, Rune Priest, in Terminator Armor, Primaris Rune Priest, Ulrich the Slayer, Wolf Priest in Terminator Armor, Primaris Wolf Priest. Primaris Wolf Priest is a single Lord of Armor with Crozius Arcanum, meaning that it is the chaplain model. Wolf Priest, Ragnar Blackbane. How many times am I going to say bloody Wolf Priest this day? Ragnar Blackbane, Crom Dragon Gaze, Harold Wolflord, on Thunderwolf, Wolflord in Terminator Armor, Wolflord in Cataphracti Armor, Primaris Wolflord in Gravis Armor, Canis Wolfborn, Wolfguard Battle Leader, Primaris Battle Leader, Wolfguard Battle Leader on Thunderwolf, Wolfguard Battle Leader in Terminator Armor, Iron Priest. It's not there.
Geez, they've got a lot.
Yeah,
That wasn't just like your elites. Was that everything?
that's every HQ choice.
That was. How many HQ choices have they got? That's insane.
All right, let's do this again. One.
But was it under elites though? Because that's where it's being described on the ForgeWorld website. Sorry, Games Workshop website.
You are absolutely correct. See, I've fallen at the first hurdle again.
It's it could just be an oversight, and they've not included it, and they've added it to the website by mistake, maybe.
Well, yeah, it might have been because it generically seems to appear. So here is their elites: Wolf Scouts, Reavers, Aggressors, Servitors, Lucas, the Trickster, Wolf and Dreadnought, which is something I wanted to talk about in a bit. Great Company Ancient, Primaris Ancient, Great Company Champion, Wolfguard Terminator, Dreadnought, Wolfguard Cataphractii Terminators, Wolfguard Tartarus Terminators, Venerable Dreadnought, Contemptor Dreadnought, Redemptor Dreadnought, Wolfen, Murderfang, and that's all their elites.
Wow.
So he's not in there. If he is meant to be in there, he ain't in there.
It's a mistake.
A mistake. We've unearthed a mistake. A tragedy has occurred. All those people who went out there and bought Space Wolf apothecaries. Oh no! They will cry.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine it's either just going to be FAQ'd or you just take a generic codex one and add it to your army somehow. I don't know.
They got to pulp this book, Phil. It's a tragedy. This is an absolute outrage. The flipping warlord traits are wrong. There's no apothecary in it.
Ridiculous.
Cats and dogs living together. Crazy.
or wolves and wolves living together.
Wolves.
Should we go on with did you say it was the murder fang you wanted to talk about?
Well, I was going to talk about Grey Hunters, but I think they're somewhat generic. It's their Space Marine unit that isn't a tactical squad. It kind of hasn't changed from what it was before. They do gain access to intercessors. Wolf Scouts are still Wolf Scouts. Reavers are still Reavers, i.e. Primaris Reavers. They've got the Aggressors, the Servitors. But yeah, the Wolfen Dreadnought. So this is new. There's never been a Wolfen Dreadnought before. Murderfang could arguably be called a Wolfen Dreadnought, but not really. He's something else entirely. But a Wolfen Dreadnought is a single model equipped with a Fenrisian Great Axe, Great Wolf Claw, and Stormbolter. It has a movement of 8, a weapon skill of 3+, ballistic skill of 5+, strength and toughness, strength 6 and toughness 7, 8 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 7, and a 3+ save. It has a heavy bunch of different options. It has an ability called Murderlust. You can reroll any failed charge rolls for this model. It also can take a Blizzard Shield, which is obviously part of the Venerable Dreadnought kit, and it has Explode. So basically, the Wolfen Dreadnought is effectively an elaboration, a further kind of development on the Venerable Dreadnought. So it has pretty much the exact same. It has a similar profile to the regular Venerable, except its movement is 8 rather than 6. So Venerable Dreadnought's movement is 6. And the Venerable Dreadnought also has weapon skill ballistic at 2+, whereas this has weapon skill 3+ and ballistic skill 5+. But beyond that, there are relative similarities in terms of war gear, and there is quite a bit of a points adjustment between the two as well, which makes it quite an interesting option for anyone looking to spam cheaper, more combat-y Dreadnought variant. So I really actually like the addition of the Wolfen Dreadnought, because we saw a lot of people before running a lot of Dreadnoughts with Space Wolf armies. So having this added to the fun means that actually you've got a cheaper version of that Venerable Axe and Shield Dreadnought that gives you a little bit more flexibility in game and certainly gives you some fun extra options. So yeah, Wolfen Dreadnought, it's pretty cool.
Because don't they have a 3-up in one? Is that right, with the shield?
No, 4-up. They've debuffed it down to a 4-up, so it's not as good as a Storm Shield anymore.
Oh, so was that from the index down to the codex, or from the Venerable to the Wolfen one?
No. In both instances, they're a 4-up. They were 3-up invuns, I believe, in the index, but they've been debuffed because they were
Okay.
stupid powerful.
Well, I remember facing two of them in a doubles game with Joe, and they were pretty scary.
Yeah, well, they just don't die. Free Up Invuln is too good on a model with that many wounds and that level of toughness. It's just crazy. And I think it just sort of... It didn't really help the pace of the game, and I think it wasn't really the right call. I think 4 Up Invuln makes sense. Also, as well, if you just look at the size of the model, so that shield ain't covering that whole flipping model. Like, come on now. At least with like the Thunder, the Terminators with a Storm Shield, it kind of covers the whole front of them. At least the larger Storm Shield variants do. You know, you could sort of imagine a Terminator hulking behind a shield. But the Dreadnought, it's like, meh, I've got this. It's like, you know, it's like having a flipping... It would be like me trying to guard myself with a, I don't know, like a hanky or something from whatever. Like, whoa! You know,
Well, it's like the Ogrins with the... I want to say it's not Storm Shields, like the little
Slab.
bucklers. No, because the slabs are the huge ones, aren't they? That
yeah.
really decent. But then there's the other ones, which
the bucklers.
are these little tiny bucklers, and you're like, they look ridiculous. But then you realise that actually it generates a field, which then sort of explains as to why it's so small. And I do wonder, whenever you see things like shields in 40k, it's like, are they physical shields or are they visually a shield, but there's some kind of force field technology going on behind them? Which would probably explain the invulnerable save aspect to it. So while it might look like a shield, maybe it's creating a sort of like a mini void shield-esque type thing.
No, that makes sense. There's some good insight. I forget about the more sci-fi aspects of this sci-fi game. It always sort of eludes
when
me.
you're looking at something which is clearly Vikings in space.
Yeah, exactly. So to close out, the last couple of things I just wanted to talk about. So we have the Wolfen. So Wolfen are a relatively new addition to the Space Wolf Codex, coming about at the end of the Wrath of Magnus from the Warzone Fenris campaign. So we didn't really have... it was the Curse of the Wolfen book, rather, that came along that introduced the Wolfen into the rules. So again, a relatively new set. I think it's only really been in circulation as of... late 2016, so still pretty young in terms of the kit. And when Wolfen arrived in 7th edition 40k, they really cemented their place as a very aggressive and viable unit because they could scream across the board and they amplified all your different units in terms of their movement and their attackables. So let's talk about how they're looking at the minute. So Wolfen are movement 7, which is okay. Weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 5+, strength 5, toughness 4, 2 wounds a man, 3 attacks, leadership 7, and a 4+ save. And the pack leader is all of those things, but it has 4 attacks rather than 3. Which is pretty good. This unit contains 1 Wolfen pack leader and 4 Wolfen. It may include up to 5 additional Wolfen, blah blah blah. Each Wolfen fights with a Wolfen Claw. The Wolfen pack leader is armed with a Frost Claw. So essentially the Wolfen Claw is strength user, -1 AP, 1 damage. It's not bad. And the Frost Claws are +1 strength, -2, 1 damage. Each time the bearer fights, it can make 1 additional attack with this weapon. You can re-roll failed wound rolls with this weapon. So again, it's like lightning claws. So again, the guy's getting 5 attacks, which is not too shabby. They can also have the option of taking a auto launcher. The auto launcher is range 12, assault D3, strength 4, 1 damage. Any Wolfen may replace their claws with a Frost Claws, a Great Frost Axe, or Thunderhammer and Storm Shield. I won't tell you what the Thunderhammer and Storm Shield rules are, because I'm sure you know, but the Great Frost Axe is strength +3, -3, D3. The bearer can make 1 additional attack with this weapon on the turn in which it has charged. So obviously that is a really good weapon, and it's something that any of these Wolfen can carry. So you can have the whole unit of Wolfen with either Frost Claws or Great Frost Axes, which is pretty tidy. They've got the ability of Bounding Leap. Models in this unit can advance and charge in the same turn. It's good. That's good. Death Frenzy, roll d6. Each time a model in this unit loses a wound on a roll of 5+, that wound is not lost. If the model in this unit is slain in the fight phase, then once the enemy unit is finished making its attacks, you can attack with this model before removing it as a casualty, even if it has already attacked that phase. So that's good. They obviously can have Storm Shield, so 3+ invulnerable save. Curse of the Wolfen, you reroll. So there's two variants of Curse of the Wolfen. There's Curse of the Wolfen Hunt. So under the influence of Curse of the Wolfen Hunt, you can reroll failed charge rolls for friendly Space Wolf infantry, bike, and cavalry units that are within 6 of this unit at the start of the charge phase. The range of this ability is doubled to 12 for friendly Blood Claw units. So obviously the effect of the Wolfen is greater amplified on Blood Claws because they're young and upcoming and crazy. And they're like, Wolfen, brr, great. Which is cool. And then Curse of the Wolfen Kill, you can make one additional attack for models in friendly Space Wolf infantry, biker, and cavalry units that are within 6 of any unit with this ability when they make their attacks in the fight phase. The range of the ability is 12 for friendly Blood Claw units. Wolfen are not affected by this ability, nor are units that made a charge with this turn while within range of the Curse of the Wolfen Hunt ability. Which basically means that you can't get the reroll chargey thing and then also take advantage of the additional attack. You have to kind of weigh up one or the other effectively. So Wolfen. My 10 cents on Wolfen. So I'm sure anyone who's watched any live stream of 40k right now is aware of a thing called a bloodletter bomb. And a bloodletter bomb is a mixture of incredible efficiency, horrifying damage, and huge amount of wounds. Are the Wolfen better than that? Well, essentially from the outset, the Wolfen are costing you 28 points a model, and that's before you've even taken into account any single kind of weapon for that. If you wanted to take a great frost axe per dude, 17 points. So you're talking 45 points a man for a Wolfen. Now to put it in context, 45 point of Wolfen will give you around 4, maybe 4.5 bloodletters. 4.5 bloodletters, or 4 bloodletters, will tear a Wolfen apart, and then the Wolfen will, obviously as a result of being killed by those bloodletters, fight back, but won't kill all those bloodletters. So the problem I have with Wolfen is that I feel like they are a combination of durability and combat prowess that doesn't really have a place anywhere, because the problem is with Wolfen is that they're good all-round elite units, good amount of wounds, good amount of attacks, good amount of survivability, good amount of perks, good amount of damage, great weapons. But at the moment, you know, a unit of bloodletters will just smash through them. And yeah, sure, they'll fight after they die, and okay, fair enough, if you kit them all out with frost claws, they'll probably kill 11 of them in the exchange. But then all your demon opponent has to do is roll a 1 for that leadership test, and an amount of them return, and it's just one of those things. It's like, I just think the problem with the Wolfen is they're a bit of a victim of the meta, in as much as unfortunately now there's so many really efficient, low cost, effective models that just laugh at these kind of units. You know, it's the same with Incubi for Dark Elder. It's the same with Sanguinary. No, well, not Sanguinary Guard so much actually. I think they're all right, but you know, there are various other super elite units that just don't really kind of have a place anymore because the game has gone so spam heavy, at least from a competitive perspective. I mean, what do you think about that, Phil? When I talk about the Wolfen, they just seem too expensive to me.
I mean, you could be right, though. It could be down to how the meta might change post. So Chapter Approved is coming out in, I guess, December. There's the big FAQs coming out in sometime probably in the next month or so, September sometime. Although that's unlikely to have any points cost, but I think you're right, things like bloodlet bombs not ruin the game, but people just focus on those units because they're so good, so they do need a bit of a nerf in some form or another, and then that will potentially make these guys better. But you are right, there's a general the general meta isn't particularly elite heavy. It's more like lots of mass infantry, lots of spam units. So maybe these guys wouldn't fit in very well. But I mean, they do seem like they are really tough and would be still really scary to come up against. But it's that thing of trying to compare a character to Gilliman. It's like they're so good, they'll never be as good as Gilliman. And I think the Blood-Let Bomb is a similar comparison. It's like they are so good for their points. Whereas you could compare, say, 15 of these guys, if they're, let's say, 50 points each, to a Lehman Russ battle tank. And it's like, you put them at opposite ends of the table, it's like, how many of those Wolfen are going to get to that Lehman Russ tank and chew it up? It's like, I imagine that they would do that.
Well, you say that. I mean, obviously, once they finally get in combat with it, which would only take them 2 turns, even if you put them like 24 inches apart, because they can advance and charge, they would tie it up in combat and it'd never get out, and they'd kill it over time, but they wouldn't kill it straight away. I mean, yeah, sure, if you gave them all axes and free up invuns. But, I mean, flipping out, if you took, I mean, if we said we were taking them with the axes and they're 48 points a model, 45 points a model, I mean, it's really basic maths, but if we took a 15-man unit of them, that's 675 points.
Oh, right, sorry. So I thought it was 40 odd points for the 5, but you're right. It's
just one model.
For one. Yeah, that is insanely expensive for just one.
Yeah.
Because surely that's even cheaper than a Terminator, right?
That is more expensive than a Terminator. That is more expensive than an average Terminator. But again, it's... it could be as survivable, but again, I mean, I'm talking about giving them their most expensive weapon upgrade, which is which is the Frost Axe, which is coming in at 17 points. If you gave them the, where is it now? Something Claw, Wolf and Claws. Wolf and Claw is 0. So if you didn't actually give them if you didn't give them the axe upgrade, they're just 28 points. And if you gave him a Frost Claw, that's 15 points. I mean, Jesus, it's expensive, man. Like it's a pricey unit.
I think you're meant to only have one of those per 5 models or something to beef them up. I mean, can they all take any weapon, or is there a particular restriction in terms of what one upgrade per 5 or?
So any model may take a Stormfrag auto launcher, and any Wolfen may replace their Wolfen Claws with the Great Frost Axe or Thunderhammer and Storm Shield. So they can have either a big axe and a Storm Shield, or they can have a Thunderhammer and a Storm Shield. So I'm not even adding in the Storm Shield to this cost as well, right? So hang on, how much is this bloody Storm Shield these days?
I guess you're totting that up. The other thing to factor in is what stratagems do the Wolfen combo with. I mean, that's one thing to also consider when you look at units. You can't just look at a unit in isolation. You need to look at what things will buff it, and that includes things like stratagems.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, mate. And when you look through for Wolfen specific stratagems, there's only really, I think there's only one. I'm trying to find it now. I'm just sort of sifting through, trying to think. I mean, they do benefit from other ones because they are obviously a Space Wolf infantry unit. No, I'm going to struggle to find that right now. We'll come back to that at some point if we do a tool. But yeah, I mean, again, if you give them the Storm Shield, they're 55 points a model. 55 points a model. That's crazy expensive.
Crazy.
So 5 of those dudes with those axes and shields is like 275 points. It's like, seriously? That's a lot of points. And you ain't ever going to see a return on that investment. Because they got a 4-up armor save and 2 wounds. Okay, they got a 3-up invuln save. You're still going to bolter the hell out of them, and they're just going to fall over dead. It's like, it's like, for 275 points.
I don't know, Primaris Marines, which are effectively the same, because he's got 2 wounds as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, they are so resilient, it's insane, because Like I don't like I've used a Punisher cannon, which is like 40 shots when you're moving under half, and it's like strength 5 AP dash. It's like you think that many shots will take out a squad or half a squad, and in the end you kill like 2 models, and that's like on average. And loads of other stuff, like the 2 wounds makes them so much more tougher. I mean, this is like an even more elite version of that, because you're unlikely to be having them in squads of 10. You're more likely to have them in squads of 5, maybe. So,
well, if you had 5 of them for 275 points, for 5 points less, you can have 15 Primaris Intercessors. 15 Primaris Intercessors would kick the piss out of this unit. Because it would run across the board, and then the Primaris Intercessors would shoot it 15 times in the first shooting phase. Say it's out. Say they move in and they're now like within 20 inches, right? They'd shoot them 15 times the first time around. Then the next turn they're within half range. Say they're literally like 2 or 3 inches away. Well, not 2 or 3 inches away, but like they're 8 or so inches away, and they fluff charges and all the rest of it. They'll shoot them 30 times, because they won't take any casualties because there's no shooting attacks. Then you'll finally get in, and then they overwatch you. You're all dead by that point. I mean, you're not going to... Even with a 3-up invuln, right? It's like, the 15 shots hits 10 times, and this is maths hammer, admittedly, but you hit 10 times because it's 1 in 3 that you miss. So 10 times, you're wounding 5 times. They're losing on average... They've lost 1 model from that first volley of fire. The following turn, they lose 2. So they've gone, okay, cool, I've got 2 guys left. I'm going to run into a unit. And then the ensuing fighting phase, the Primaris squad has I mean, assuming you can get everyone within, which you obviously can't, but let's say for this example you could, you're then going to take a further 33 attacks back. So you're going to lose to that as well, because those are hitting on 3s and winning on 4s. It's like, I've got 3 invulns. Yeah, great, you're all dead. Like, there's no... And okay, yeah, they'll fight afterwards, and sure, they'll kill 1 unit of 5, but, I mean, that's the overriding problem with these types of units, is they're just super inefficient, and that's against a Primaris Intercessor squad, which isn't really the top tier either. It's not like I'm comparing them to a unit of 20 Guardians, or a unit, with Black Guardian stratagem that like could just melt them. It's it's crazy. Anyway, I'll close out with I had 2 last units that I was going to talk about. Thunderwolf Cavalry, because it's an iconic Space Wolf unit. It's still pretty good. I still like it a lot. I think, if you're doing Space Wolves, you owe it to yourselves to get a big unit of Thunderwolf Cavalry, because it's cool and it's thematic. They've got movement 10, weapon skill, ballistic skill 3, strength 4, toughness 5, 3 wounds, 2 attacks, leadership 8, and a 3+ save. And the pack leader has 3 attacks rather than 2. This unit... I thought you were saying something. Doesn't matter. Move on. They can have storm shields. They're basically a big unit of cavalry, and they've got loads of attacks, and they're cool. I don't really know how much to elaborate beyond that, because they don't have any other special rules. I mean, they combo quite nice with Wolfen, I guess, because then you can do the reroll charges and other sort of buffs and stuff. As I said before, if you're going to do it, you probably want to take Harold, because he's really cool as well. Yeah, I mean, they're all right. They're still Thunderwolf Cavalry. They're not as good as they've been in the past, but they're still pretty tidy. I like them.
It sounds good.
They sound all right. Still more of that. And then the last one I wanted to talk about, the very last thing, is one of the other really great units within this book, which is the Stormwolf. Well, the Stormwolf and its more shooty variant, the Stormfang gunship. So these are the 2 exclusive Space Wolf flyers. You may remember them as the ones with the long kind of front, it's almost like they're like battering ram style ships. They're still pretty damn amazing for what they are. Rather than talk about both of them, because I'm conscious about time, I think we've really kind of gone into as much depth as we need to on this. I will focus on the Stormfang gunship, because it's the more killy variant. So a Stormfang gunship is a single model equipped with a Hellfrost Destructor, 2 twin heavy bolters, and 2 Stormstrike missile launchers. The Hellfrost Destructor is when attacking, this weapon chooses one of the following profiles.
If a model suffers any unsaved wound from this weapon but is not slain, roll d6. On a 6, the target suffers a mortal wound. Range 24, heavy, 3d free, strength 6, -2, 2 damage is the dispersed beam, and then the focus beam is range 24, heavy, free, strength 8, -4, d6 damage. So it is a slightly lower strength range 24 las cannon with a better AP. So it's got AP of -4 rather than -3. So again, against something like a Storm Talon, no, not Storm Talon, that's another flyer, a Baneblade, that's the word I couldn't find, these can be quite annoying because you're not getting a save against it whatsoever.
Yeah, that's quite handy.
But it's only wounding you on 4s, but still, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, las cannons sort of force you to only have a save on 6s. So what would you rather be doing? Wounding on 3s and letting them have a... You wounding on... What's the strength normally? 9 of a las cannon. So yeah, you'd be
las cannon, yeah.
3s, but they'd be saving on 6s. Or do you want to wound on 4s and then for them to have no save? I think I'd almost rather have the wounding on 3s. I think that's giving you better odds.
I agree. But I think it's the versatility of it and the fact that it's on a flyer and it's got all that other functionality that makes it pretty damn awesome. But yeah, I agree with you. I think winning on 3s and having 6-up saves is a preferable situation in that matchup. But still, it's interesting. I think it's quite a cool little weapon and quite a cool profile. Like all fires, it's got crash and burn. So if you reduce it to 0 wounds, it could explode. Scary, scary. Hover jets, before this model moves in any movement phase, you can declare it to hover. Move character becomes 20. So again, it doesn't need to always be going supersonic. Power of the machine spirit, it can move and fire with no negative penalties for its heavy weapons, which is super amazing. Airborne is -1 to hit. Airborne is this model cannot charge, can only be charged by units that can fly, and can only attack or be attacked by the fight phase by units that can fly. Hard to hit is the -1 to hit, and supersonic is all the usual thingy rules. In addition to having a gigantic cannon on it, it's also got a transport capacity of 6 Space Marine infantry, which is also good. So I think the Stormfang and its more transport heavy variant, the Storm Wolf, are 2 very, very good options. I actually think, now that I look at it, the Storm Wolf with its improved transport capacity to 16 is something that actually gives it a little bit more viability as well, because you can get big units of Blood Claws and other things in there. Unfortunately, it can't carry any of the Primaris stuff, but that's a GW incentive to try and slowly but surely, remove the old Space Marine stuff, it seems. But regardless of my speculation,
put that tinfoil hat back on.
Exactly. Bar my little speculation on that, that has been my whistle-stop tour of things that were interesting in the Space Wolf book. I didn't want to get into stratagems and all that kind of stuff because it's big and confusing, and it's only really relevant if you're going to actually play that Space Wolf army. I think, units still have a viable place to be sort of discussed in the initial sense, and I think those units there represent some of the more unique aspects of it. I mean, you can still just play it as a Space Marine army. You can still do all the same tricks that you would associate with a regular Space Marine army. I was listening to the Frontline Gaming guys. They were saying the whole 6-inch heroic intervention is a really tricky thing because it'll surprise people. But let's be honest with ourselves, it's not as good as the Blood Angels +1 to wound. It's not as good as the Ultramarines +1 to leadership and moving back and shooting as if they had advanced. It's not even as good as the Iron Hands ignoring wounds on 6s. It's probably... Is it the worst Space Marine trait available? Maybe. It's a toss-up between them and probably the Crimson Fists for most useless in terms of chapter tactics. I mean...
It's interesting. It's very thematic, but only if there's only characters that benefit from doing that heroic intervention, then it's pretty limited unless you go for you'd have to maximize your characters. as much as possible. And I mean, that is, I don't know how feasible that is, but
I just think again,
on
if you're looking at it purely from a competitive game perspective, I don't think we're going to see Space Wolves anywhere near the top tables of any tournament anytime soon, unless of course someone out there has absolutely cracked the code and come up with some really clever tricks. I think there are units in that army that will give you a degree of opportunity and flexibility. I think there is something to be said for the Thunderwolf Cavalry. I think there's still viability in that unit. I think their flyer is good, and I think there's still good options there. I think the Wolf and Dreadnought is quite interesting. So the idea of having like a Vanguard detachment of 3 Wolf and Dreadnoughts and an Iron Priest could be interesting because it's cheap and it's a frustrating thing to have to deal with. So yeah, I mean there are things, but I think the idea of a pure old school style Space Wolf army being competitively viable is just not true. I think there are things that people will be able to take advantage of and little things that people will be able to pick out, but I don't think they're ever going to be. I think it's a shame because I think a lot of Space Wolf players have enjoyed having one of the most competitive codexes for a very long time in GW. I think ever since the 5th edition Space Wolf book came into circulation, Space Wolves have always been the Space Marine chapter for competitive players because they've always had the most amount of nonsense. Whereas in 8th edition, they've massively toned them down. They're nowhere near as good as they were in 5th edition. They're nowhere near as good as they were in 6th edition. And they're certainly nowhere near as good as they were in 7th. So yeah, it must be a bit of a bummer for all those people who have been used to having Space Wolves as a top tier army for the last 10 years being flipped round and essentially having one of the worst Space Marine chapters out there. In my opinion, I don't know. I can be proven wrong. So that's all of it done now. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, as always. How do you feel that one went, Phil? Do you think we're getting better at this?
We're probably getting longer rather than shorter, and I don't know if that's a good thing. But it is good. It's obviously fun to not have Joe, so I can steal all the limelight from him.
Well, exactly, man, exactly. And I think we did an excellent job, just the two of us together. It gives me confidence in the future should Joe fail to appear, as he often does. Not to sort of besmirch him in any meaningful way, but he's been fairly unreliable over the last few weeks. So yeah. Wow, indeed. We still love him, though. We hope that he'll return for next week. It's not quite the same without him, is it?
No, that's true.
Absolutely. But no, I really appreciate it, guys, and thanks very much for listening. If you have listened all the way through to this, I hope you found our opinions insightful and or interesting. I imagine you did if you're listening to us say this, because obviously you made it all the way to the end. So genuine thank you for that. Obviously we're not going to be talking about Kill Team as we said we may have done at the start. That will be another day, hopefully when Joe has arrived. He can talk about his 2 epic defeats to Phil. Won't that be fun?
Exactly. Everyone wants to know about that.
Exactly. You can rub it in his face. Maybe I'll sit that one out. I'll just listen to the two of you basically talk about what went wrong or what went right, because I'm sure maybe I need to give talking constantly a bit of a rest. But no, yeah, that was episode 4 of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Look forward to seeing you again when we get around to doing it again, which hopefully won't be too long. Yeah, thanks very much, guys. Cheers.
Take care. Bye.